All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to MVP Baseball 2005. We are here in our off-season video. Now, full disclosure, I did record this video just live in audio when I was playing, but the audio was messed up, so now I had to edit it around and just do a live commentary now, post there. I choked it out. Either way, the big thing that we're looking at right now that I forgot to mention in the last one was C.C. Sabathia was injured for the entire season. We did miss out on C.C. Sabathia. He had a torn shoulder muscle, and so, he was gone for the entire season. And so now, it was like 2 weeks, but you get it. But now we're looking at the career stats screen because I was trying to compare 05 stats to 06 stats. And one of the big things looking at Vinny Castilla here is that his numbers are eerily similar to last year's. His average is down a few points. He hit one more home run than he did last year. RBIs are down by a little bit, but still a pretty decent season for Vinny Castilla, pretty much on pace with where he was. Tony Armas Jr., his ERA shot up by about .30, just about, .35, but his record is about the same and about 7 less innings. So he appeared in as many games as he did last year. Very similar. It looks like he was a little bit more efficient, though, last year. So maybe a lot of that was just a bad September or just a bad month that he had. Could have indicated to that increase in some of those numbers. So next we are going to look at a few other of our players, like Luis Ayala, who had a much more improved season. I think he's probably the most improved national in the first 2 years at the helm. I don't think there's another national who's had such a humongous increase in production from their first season, or our first season rather, in DC. So Luis Ayala saw a lot more usage, about 20 to 30 more innings, and his ERA went down almost an entire run, so that's massive. That is a humongous increase in production. Andy Chavez was hitting a little bit worse this year. He didn't hit nearly as well. His injury took him out of about 40 more games, or about 35 more games than he saw last year. He almost played an entire season last year, but his average went down to 294. He was hitting over 300 last year. He did hit more home runs this year, though, which I'm okay taking a little bit of a dip on Andy Chavez's average if he's hitting for a little bit more power. So maybe I'd like to see closer to 20 home runs if you're going to hit 294. But regardless, those are two great seasons from Andy Chavez, who's been our lockdown leadoff hitter pretty much since last season. And that's 114 swiped bags in those 2 seasons. So he is on an incredible pace on the base pass, figuratively and literally. So looking at some other players now, we're going to look at Seth Griesinger now, who had a pretty decent season in the rotation. He was a lot better last year, which is why I gave him the chance this year as a starter. I think he was primarily a reliever for us last year, though, as he appeared in about 30 more games last year than he did this year, but he did pitch more innings this year as a starter. So his ERA went up about a run and a half, which I guess reflects, the higher usage here, but at least it was under 4. His career ERA is over 4, but this season he was still under 4, which, as you can see from his other seasons in the majors, that's kind of a good thing. His ERA is about half of what it was before he came and started playing for us full time. So that is an important thing to note moving forward. Hopefully we can keep that production. I'd like him to be in the mid to low 3s. I think that's a more reasonable expectation with where he's been now in the last 2 seasons. Jose Guillen now had pretty much an eerily similar season to last year. He played in about 3 more games. His average is up by a couple points. He hit about 8 more home runs than he did last year. The RBIs is up incredible. I know we don't really look at RBIs much anymore in the modern day, but back then we don't have a ton of anchor stats to really go off of, so the fact that he had about 20 to 30 more runs batted in is incredible. To me, I think that's incredible. But looking at Cristian Guzman is another interesting one because he's been pretty much relegated to a bench bat in the middle infield. And his season numbers are he had the second best season by the numbers in his career, but he played the least. So, that's kind of makes up for it. So he had the second highest average in his career, but he played the fewest amount of games in his career this season. He also wasn't hitting for a ton of power either. His best season, still at 2001 season, we seem to just be kind of getting further and further away from that in terms of consistency. So I don't know what the future lies for Cristian Guzman. I know it's been a pretty big topic for the entire 2006 season, and it's going to continue into 2007 since we still have a couple of years with Cristian Guzman. But that's where we kind of are moving forward as we look at the rest of the roster here. Matt Holliday has a huge step down in production from where he was in Colorado, which I guess is to be expected. I know the game probably doesn't have a factor in for, hitting in Denver, but we can just blame his lower production on that. But he still hit for a good amount of power here. Second highest number of home runs in his career. His RBIs were close to where they were last year, so he was still pretty productive offensively, even if he wasn't hitting as much. And then Sun Woo Kim saw much more usage in this season. His ERA is up about a whole entire run. He was in about a handful more games than he was last year. So that's the big difference in innings. Pitched about 40 more innings this year and got an extra run on his ERA in exchange for that. So his ERA is pretty close to where his career ERA is. So maybe like a mid-4s is kind of what to expect out of Sun Woo Kim moving forward, which is kind of what I expected from him throughout this season, and that's just about what we got from him. So one of the last players we're going to look at here is Jose Vidro, and his production from last year is completely way down. It's a lot closer to where he is career-wise. He seems to be a pretty consistent 310 or better hitter, except for his 2004 season with the Nats. But in 2006, he did put up just a straight 300 season, and 2005 seems to be the outlier. So it looks like maybe the best season we have with Vidro might be behind us. I'm hoping it isn't, but it's possible. So here is a look at our report card one last time before we get into the offseason festivities. We did get someone to finish top 8 in MVP. I'm going to guess it was Jose Guillen who finished top 8 in MVP. I think that's the only player that probably would. Other than that, I can't tell you who would even be getting MVP votes on our team. Maybe Rookie of the Year votes, because we had a few rookies that really shine, like Wes King and Ivan Vukarina, and even J.D. Corey in the last month, but he wouldn't be eligible being a September call-up. So, but this is a look at how we've done with the organization so far. We've hit a couple goals, and we're close to hitting some others. But as we move into the offseason now, your World Series champion for 2006 is the Cardinals. So just like real life, the Cardinals win the 2006 World Series. They cannot be stopped from winning that World Series, except this time they did not beat the Tigers for it. And they had a much better season than they did in the real life 2006. So looking at the playoff tree, Boston beat the Twins 3-0. The Cardinals beat the Phillies 3-2. And the Marlins beat the Dodgers 3-2. And the Rangers beat the Yankees 3-2. So in the championship series, Boston would beat the Rangers, and the Cards would beat the Marlins in a 7-game series. So the Marlins went pretty deep into the postseason, just barely losing to the Cardinals, who would end up beating Boston in 7 games to win the World Series. So if you're a Red Sox fan, I'm sorry that you had to see that, but not all of us can win, can see each other win. If you're a Cardinals fan, congratulations. You got to see a World Series in this series. I got to see my favorite team win in the previous series, or in the previous season, so I'm doing okay. But here's another flash at the report card again, and showing it to us for a second time. I think we can hit that MLB home game thing. I think we can. But the big thing to note is that they're increasing our budget by almost $10 million, $9.1 million. It was what we're going to have added to our budget. So maybe free agency can get a little bit more interesting. We might be able to rebuild our rotation. Yeah. So looking at retirements here, Randy Johnson is calling it a quits. David Wells, Jamie Moyer, Kenny Rogers, Steve Sparks, going down the line. So here's all the guys that we are now losing to retirement just around the MLB. And then, of course, we're losing a lot of prospects as well, potentially. And one of the big things to note here that we're going to look at, I have it written down here. I've got all of our prospects written down. We do have a few of our draft picks from our first draft retiring, but also we're losing Gary Bennett, our backup catcher. He's been our backup catcher for the last 2 seasons, and he is now retiring for personal reasons. So we are now going to have to replace our backup catcher role, which, very, very low on the priority list, but it is something that we're going to have to look for now in free agency. We're also losing Francis Beltran from New Orleans. He's primarily just pitched, I think, in New Orleans for the last couple of years. And then Scott Felix is also retiring. He doesn't have any stats. I don't know why he doesn't have any stats. I figured he would have pitched, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. And then Josh Labandaria, who I think we even tried to move in the first season. I think we even tried to trade him since he was just kind of lost in the fray of our middle infield prospects, but we weren't able to move off of him. So he's finally just retiring after another season in New Orleans with no path really to make it to the Major League roster. We're also losing Eric Fox, a right fielder from Harrisburg. And we're also losing blew in one of our third basemen who was kind of like in that logjam of just third base prospects that just weren't really hitting all that well. So he's calling it a career. I guess he's not as thrilled on the idea of just rotting away on this team, I guess. So we're losing out on him. A lot of people from Harrisburg and the Cannons are retiring. But Courtney Francisco, the center fielder, he is one of our draft picks from the first year. He was our 8th round pick in our first draft. He is retiring after just one season of professional ball because of ability. And I'm not sure if that's like an injury. It might be, because I think he was injured for a long time. I think that might be it. But Miguel Vizcano is also retiring. We're losing a first baseman, so our third and first baseman at Double A are gone, and then Dane Garrick, who I think was one of the better prospects that we were looking at Double A, and I guess he's calling it quits. He's done. So we had a lot of injuries in the minors, and I'm guessing the ability thing is tethered to whether or not your prospects stay or just choose to retire. So Neil Tesmer is also retiring, so we're losing a couple third base prospects, and then Sterling Valdez was our 9th round pick in the draft last year, so we lose 2 draft picks already to retirement because of personal ability, I guess. So, and then Barry Haynes, another catching prospect, is retiring. I say prospect, but I think these guys are all probably in their mid-20s by now. Not our draft picks; those guys are still young, but that guy's definitely in his mid-20s. So we lose out on Mitchell Vargas, Mark Hernandez, Rick Garcia, another infield prospect. So a lot of outfield and infield prospects. So that might be where we kind of focus at to try and reload in the draft. We're going to have to draft quite a bit of infield guys just to replenish where we're at in single and double A, and hopefully maybe reload some of the depth in our farm, because I don't think we have really a particularly good or interesting farm system as it stands right now. I think we did before, like when we started this series, there's a few enticing guys, but I think we're getting further and further away from that. So here is the draft order as it stands. The Reds are first, the Royals are second, Rockies third, Devil Rays fourth, Diamondbacks fifth, Indians sixth, Brewers seventh, Mariners eighth, Pirates ninth, and the reigning World Series champs from last year, the Tigers, come in at 10. So our division rival, the Mets, are here at 11, but we are all the way at 17. So we are not in the top 15. That's not a top 15 that we want to be a part of. So we did good enough to get outside of the top 15 in draft order. So we are here in the 17th slot. We had a pretty high-end pick last year, but so here is a review now of our draft. I have them all wrote down. I picked 2 starting pitching prospects at the top of our order here in our first couple rounds because they gave them to me. In the last year's draft, I think there might have been 1 pitching prospect that I could pick from in the first couple rounds, and after that it was done. Like, it didn't give me another pitching prospect. That's why I drafted so many position players, because it just didn't give me the option. There just weren't that many pitching prospects available. So I picked 2 good starters, and then everything else, it was just kind of reloading and just trying to add some depth at some positions. So I got, like a catching prospect, I got a couple outfielders, and I got some infielders and stuff. So I feel like I got some pretty high-end, or at least high-ceiling type of players into about half of the draft. I'm pretty happy about, the first handful of guys, and then I think it's really kind of the last 2 or 3 where it's just kind of like, whatever, some of these infield guys are just like, we'll see, but I'm a little excited about some of the outfield guys, and to see how they do. We need to start building at third base for sure, and we need to start building at first base as well, and then I don't think we have a lot of guys at second or short, but I think we still have some guys in our system in the middle infield where we should be okay. So we're going to go through and sign all of our prospects now, or at least all the minor league guys back to their contracts, so that we can start looking forward to how we need to build our major league roster. We still have $24 million left to play with after signing all of our rookies, and now we need to go through and sign all of our minor league players back to their respective teams. So after we do that, the only major league contract that is expiring is Vinny Castilla. So remember, Vinny Castilla is 39 years old. He has given up some great production for us. His contract really isn't even that expensive. We definitely have the money to keep him. It's just, I don't know, his production dropped off, or his stats. He regressed mightily after spring training last year. If you remember, his numbers drastically dipped. He still put up a similar season, so he might do that again, but because of that, I don't feel confident bringing him back for an age 40 and 41 season. I don't know about that. I can't do that. So, looking at free agency now, because we're going to let Vinny Castilla go. We're now looking for a new third baseman. Here are some of the top people in free agency. There really aren't a lot. There's no one that was really enticing me. The two third basemen that were available in free agency had similar numbers to Vinny Castilla, and the money they were looking for was for more. So the only thing that would really gain from trying to sign any of them would just be age. Like David Bell was who I looked at. I even threw an offer his way to see if he would want to come to Washington, maybe sway him away from Philly, but he would get into a bidding war, I think, with the Indians, and it would already go over $4 million. And I'm not trying to be like, we have the money for it. I don't think a huge investment in someone like David Bell is going to drastically change the offense on this team. We have a top 10 offense, or at least a top 15 offense, and I don't think we really need to break the bank on a position like third on someone like David Bell to improve that production, to get it to like a top 5. I think we can survive with the caliber of offense that we have right now, where we'd really struggle is, of course, on the pitching side. So I would throw some money at some pitching prospects who didn't get brought back by their clubs. They're in their early 20s. They pitch decently well at their level, and I think they could probably spend some time at New Orleans and then make a difference on the big league clubs. So with the end of free agency now coming, we find ourselves here on March 4th, 2007, getting ready for spring training, the next phase of our dynasty here, the potentially last season of our dynasty. It's very likely that this could be the last if we don't really achieve our goals that are laid out by our contract. I think we can afford to miss the playoffs, but we would certainly need to at least hit those other goals. So looking at the roster heading into spring training, Brendan Harris from New Orleans has been bumped up to the big league club as our everyday third baseman as it stands right now. So there are already some people that I'm looking to move around. As you can see, I'm futzing around with the roster because there's a lot of people I think we should be able to move and put in different positions. We have a lot of bench guys who just can't really work, so maybe trades or moves need to be done. I just set up our trading block and just see what the AI gives me. I might just take them just to get some prospects and get some of these guys off of the big league club because I really just don't know what to do with them at this point. Like Nate Bruce is a good outfield prospect who's now just sitting on our bench because the game thinks that he needs to be on the major league club, which, maybe he does, but I don't think we have a lot of room. We already have like a log jam of 3 or 4 outfielders who could probably play every day on every team, and so we need to figure that out. And then Chris Ponson is one of the free agents that I signed. He's 23 years old. Like I said, he was a solid pitching prospect that for some reason didn't get brought back by his team. I think he'll be okay. He's already got 60 stamina. He could potentially be a starter if we really need him to. So, but we're going to make some moves in the rotation as well because it automatically put Griesinger in New Orleans for some reason. But Griesinger was our best starter last season, so he's definitely going to get back up to the big league club. The game, of course, already put C.C. Sabathia back in our starting rotation, which I'm not sure if that's going to last. I want to see how he does in spring, and then maybe, there's going to be a lot of positions that we're going to be looking at in spring training because I think there's some guys who could really work their way into everyday roles and work their way into the big league club if they do decently in spring, but there are a lot of roles that I think are already fulfilled. So I think John Patterson, that experiment is essentially done. He's probably going to go back to New Orleans, and that's just going to be what we do with that. And then our outfield is probably going to be Chavez, J.D. Corey, Jose Guillen, and then Matt Holliday will split time somewhere. He might be the 4th outfielder with how he hit. I don't know. We'd have to see how Endy Chavez does coming off of the injury that he sustained last season, hoping that he's healthy and ready to play. So, but that is how we would kind of look. I'm going to do a lot more roster building and moving around in between videos before we get into our official spring training video. But it's going to be a big spring training because we really need to see this team improve and increase over the course of spring. Now, of course, you remember last season we only lost like 4 games in spring. We went like 18-4, something crazy like that. So I doubt we'll do that again. But in case we do, that'll be good to see everyone improve, and hopefully we get a lot of improvement at a lot of prospects that we are looking at. I want J.D. Corey to have a full season like he had in September. That'd be amazing. But that's going to do it for the offseason video. Sorry again for the weirdness of it, but hopefully I see you guys in the first video, the spring training video for 2007, year 3.